Hi there, I'm David and welcome to Sheeran Guitar Tutorials, where I try and teach myself and you every Ed Sheeran song the way he plays it live, one song at a time. Today's lesson will be Magical off his new album Autumn Variations. For this song you'll need your guitar in standard tuning and a capo on the 4th fret. Let's jump in. Alright, so let's take a close look at the chords of this song, and the one thing I'll say first before getting into this is that Ed Sheeran likes to play sort of variations of the basic, chords like an E minor or D. He likes to, make them either sus versions or add versions. And so I'll say that I'll show you all the chords he plays, but if you would like to only just play the normal version of the chord, I would say that's perfectly valid as well. It kind of just comes down to how you like it to sound and whether you want to play it exactly like the song or not. So starting with that in mind, the first chord to show you is an E minor 7, which is typically played as shown there in the diagram. But what Ed seems to be doing in the song is basically playing it with his middle finger just off, not fretting a note there. And so that effectively just leaves you with your index, your ring, and your pinky down and playing all 6 strings, which is still an E minor 7 based on the notes you're playing. It's just, it sounds a little ever so slightly different. So you could play it like that or with your middle finger down. It comes down to personal preference. All right, so next chord would be an A7 sus 4, which if you're going from your E minor 7, you basically just remove your index finger and your middle if you had it down, and you keep your ring and pinky where they are, and you play all 6 strings. And that's your A7 sus 4. And this is kind of just a way to hammer on to the E minor 7 later, so you could play the song without this chord if you want to, but if you want it to sound how Ed is playing it in the live acoustic version, it is included there. Your next chord is just a simple D chord. Nothing fancy going on there. He also does play a D sus 4 chord, which is just putting your pinky finger down on the 3rd fret of the 1st string there, playing those bottom 4 strings. And this again is something that he does, which can make the song sound, more lively. You definitely don't need to include this. If you would like to just play a basic D the entire song, that's fine too, up to you, but the D sus 4 is definitely in there. Next 2 chords are just kind of 2 C chords, right? So first with the C add 9, it's kind of shown in the diagram there, and playing those bottom 5 strings, muting the 6th string with either your thumb or sort of the tip of your middle finger there can kind of push up against it, playing those bottom 5 strings. And then the other variation, which you can include if you would like, because Ed does it in the song, is basically a C sus 2 chord. So going from your C add 9, you just remove that index finger and you still play the bottom 5 strings. And again, it just adds a little more life to the song. But if you just want to play a C add 9 every time there's a C chord in the song, that is valid as well. Then finally, there's basically 3 versions of a G chord. This first one he only plays once, I believe, and it's just a normal 4-finger G chord, playing all 6 strings. And I believe that's only played in the very first time in the intro. The rest of the song is either a G sus 2 or a G5 chord. So starting with the G5 chord first, basically, if you're going from your G, you just remove your index finger and kind of use that middle finger to mute that 5th string there, and you're playing all 6 strings. That's a G5. And then there's also a G sus 2, where if you're going from your G5, you put your index finger down on the 2nd fret of the 3rd string there and play all 6 strings. And that's your G sus 2 chord. So again, 3 different versions in there. If you would like to not make it as complicated as that, you can just play a normal G, the whole song, and that'll sound just fine. But if you want to play it the way Ed does it, it looks like there's 3 versions in there. So just getting into the strumming a little bit here, there's basically 2 strumming patterns, one of which kind of has a different emphasis, which we'll get into. So showing the first one here on the screen, it's basically just a down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up strumming pattern. And so the bold and italicized letters there are kind of where you give a little extra emphasis, so a little maybe harder strum, again, just to give the song a little more life to it if you would like. That's kind of how Ed does it and how you'll hear it. If you would like to leave those out, that's perfectly fine. But in, you know, kind of going through slow through that first strumming pattern, it would be a down, up, down, up, down, up, down, down, up, down. That's basically the first one. The sort of variation on that strumming pattern is now shown, and so all it really does is move that last emphasized strum from that second to last down strum to the second to last up strum, and that's just included in a certain part of the song, which we can get to later. So again, it's still the same thing, but you just kind of emphasize that up strum as opposed to that down strum, which you'll see Ed Sheeran kind of play in the intro and the verses for a bit. So basically doing it slow, it's a down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. Slight variation. Again, you don't have to include that if you don't want to, but gives the song a little more life. So then getting into that last strumming pattern shown there on the screen, a little different from the first two that I showed, and it's mainly played during the choruses. It's a down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. The emphasized there. So to play it with those emphasized strums at a little quicker speed, it's a and you'll notice I give a little extra emphasis where those bold and italicized strums are. It gives a little life to it and seems to be kind of how Ed is playing it. If you'd like to leave those out, again, that is totally fine. But so yeah, now you got the chords and the strumming pattern, and let's kind of jump into the song. All right, so starting with the intro of the song, there's basically 2 lines of tab here, and what I've done is basically highlight the chord that you play and the strumming that goes along with it in the same color, so you know what strumming to do for which chord. And so yeah, basically 2 lines of tab here, and you're using that first strumming pattern that we talked about already, both variations. So you see in that first line of tab, that last emphasized up strum is on the up strum there, whereas in the bottom it's on the down strum there. So starting with the first line of chord, you have an E minor 7 chord, and you're going to play that for the first portion of that strumming pattern for the down, up portion. So it's just, you then switch to your D, and you would play a down, up, down for that, and then you would put down that pinky if you're doing that and play the final up, down, up. So that first portion would kind of sound like this, playing slowly. The second half of that first portion, you're using that C sus2 chord, where you basically just do a down strum, and then you hammer on to the 2nd fret of the 4th string with your index finger. That's what that H-I means. So it's basically a down strum and then a hammer-on, which basically then leads right into your C add 9, which you play in up, down, up on. So that C portion would sound like this. And then the last bit is your G chord there. So this is the only time you're playing this full G chord, and it's basically just the down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up portion of that last strumming pattern. So slowly it's a... So the first line of tab in its entirety would sound like this. The second line of tab is more or less the same thing with a few small differences. The first one being that instead of that initial down strum being on an E minor 7, it's on that A7 sus4 chord, and then you hammer on to the E minor 7. So it would be A7 sus4 down strum, then you hammer on to the 2nd fret of the 5th string there, creating your E minor 7, and then you do the up, down, up strumming on your E minor 7. That's really the main difference of that first portion there. And then you have your D segment. So that first portion of the second line of tab would sound like... And then the second portion of the second line of tab is the same thing, except instead of a G, you're doing your G5 chord, and that last emphasized strum is now on the second to last down strum as opposed to the second to last up strum. So that last portion would again just sound like this. So the entirety of the intro would sound like this. And the last thing I'll say about the intro is that, being the intro to the song, Ed generally plays this portion pretty quietly, except for those emphasized strums. So if you kind of want to get, some loud strumming and quiet strumming woven into how you play it, I would suggest playing the intro pretty quietly, minus the emphasized strums that I have listed there. All right, so getting into verse number 1 here, the first line of tab is identical to the last line of tab we just played in the intro. There are no changes there, so I will just kind of play that in its entirety again for you. Going into that second line of tab, it's not very different from the first line, but instead of hammering on to your E minor 7, you just start with your E minor 7 for the very beginning portion, and then at the end you have an emphasized up strum on that second to last up strum, basically. So to play that in its entirety, it would sound like this. And so then those first 2 lines of tab get played through twice, with being exactly the same minus that 1 asterisk I have. So at the very end of that G5, the last time through, you don't emphasize that second to last up strum. You actually emphasize the second to last down strum again. So second time through that's the only difference that you're playing there. And then the final portion is sort of just like a lead-in to the chorus. It's just a D chord section where it's an emphasized initial down strum to up down for the D chord, like this. Then you go to the D sus4 and you do an emphasized up strum, down strum, up strum, like this. And then you would go into the chorus. So that last little section would just sound like this. So the entirety of the verse would sound like this. Then when you get to your first chorus, which is basically 1 line of tab played through 3 times, and then a final portion afterwards. So there is a small change each time you play the main tab, which I will get into. It's mainly just the G chord there. But what I have shown starts with your G5 chord, and now you'll notice that though we're playing that second strumming pattern, so the down, up, 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 is now the strumming pattern you're going to be playing for the chorus there. So starting on the G5, you have that first portion, which is a down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up for your G5. And then you do something similar to what you just did with your Ds, but you're doing it with your Cs. So you start on a C sus2 and you do down, up, down, emphasizing that first down strum. And then you do up, down, up, emphasizing that first up strum for your C add 9. So that first portion of the first line of the chorus would sound like this, starting on the G5. You then move on to the second half of the first line here, and so you just have your E minor 7, which plays the same strumming pattern as what you just did for your G5. And then you have the fun little D block here, which you just kind of did for your C sus2 of down, up, down for the D, up, down, up for the D sus4. And so that first line of tab for the chorus would sound like this. And from there, you're basically playing the same thing again, It's just the G portion that I notice Ed changes a little bit, whether it's intentional or it's slight mess up, I'm not sure. But basically for the G, the second time through this first chorus, he starts with a G5 on the down strum, but then goes to the G sus2 for the up, down, up, down, up, down, up portion. So you can do that if you want to play it exactly the way he does it, or you can just play a G5 or just the G sus2 or just the normal G. It's up to you, but the way I see him play it is that G5 down strum, and then he puts his index finger down for the G sus2 and does the up, down, up, down, up, down, up for the rest of the G. And then the remainder of that line of tab is the same as the first time we played it. So to just play the second line all the way through, it would sound like... And then so the third time through, now you do just play the G sus2 for the entire G portion. And then the rest of the line of the tab is the same. So no switching there for the Gs. So it would sound like this. And then so this fourth time through the chorus here is sort of 3/4 of what we just did. So you start again on your G sus2, and then you do your C block there with the C sus2 and C add 9. But this time when you get to the E minor 7, you're only playing that portion basically. You don't go to the D. So it ends after what you would play for the E minor 7, because then you would kind of just go right into the post chorus there. So that last line would sound like this. So to play the chorus in its entirety, it would sound like this. Now back to the post-chorus. After chorus 1, it's basically playing just one line of the intro again. So back to that initial strumming pattern, and when you change your chords there, and your last emphasized strum is on the second to last up strum, as you see. So you're already ending the chorus on an E minor 7, so you're already there with the chord, and yeah, you just kind of continue from there. So because it's the same as the intro, I'll just play this post-chorus through and show you how it's played there. And then you would go right into the second verse. So then would be verse 2, and that's actually the exact same thing as verse 1. So if you go back to the first verse portion of this video, and just do that exact same thing, it applies exactly to the second verse. So I would just go look at that. Then you have your second chorus, which is more or less the same thing as the first chorus. It's just now the G chord is always the G sus2. It's not the G5 or anything like that. It's only G sus2. And this time you actually do play that whole line of tab through 4 times, because instead of going into a post-chorus after this chorus, you go into basically a break, which I'll get to in the next portion. So but what you need to know is you basically play this line of tab through 4 full times, just using the G sus2, but it's that same chorus strumming pattern, so nothing new there. So I'll just play the second chorus in its entirety, and then we can move on. So then you kind of have this break portion after the second chorus, which is pretty similar to what is played in the chorus. It's the same strumming pattern. You start with 1 full line of tabs there. The only real difference here is that This time it seems like Ed plays the C sus2 for the entire C portion. It doesn't look like he hammers on to a C add 9. So again, intentional or not, I'm not sure, but that's what he does. If you would like to still do that hammer on to C add 9, I'm sure that's probably fine. But just playing what I see him do, it's just that C sus2. And so to basically just play that first line of tab all the way through, it would sound like this. And then the second line is something that we've seen already in the first verse, kind of how that, first chorus on how that ends. You play through to the E minor 7 part, and then you stop and you don't play the D portion. So we've already gone over this, so to just play this through in its entirety again, it would sound like this. And to play the entire break all the way through, it would sound like this. So then that brings us to the third verse, and there's nothing really new here. It's still the verse strumming pattern and changing chords for the verses as we've done before, but something to note is that the third verse is generally strummed pretty quietly, so if you're trying to practice that and want to sound and have that volume change that Ed Sheeran has, I would definitely strum quieter for this verse here. But yeah, the first line of tab just starts on E minor 7. It does not start with a hammer-on from the A7 sus4 to an E minor 7. And since we've kind of already gone over this, I'll just play this first line of tab for you here. Second line of tab is again the same thing, starting on your E minor 7, except now at the very end, that second to last up strum gets the emphasis as opposed to the second to last down strum. So we've gone over that before. The third line of tab now has that A7 sus4 hammer on to the E minor 7. So again, we've kind of gone over that before. It's just, Ed just plays each verse ever so slightly different. So that's really the main difference here. So that third line of tab, as shown here, would sound like this. And then that fourth line is again the same thing as the second line, except now your last emphasized strum is on that second to last down strum as opposed to your second to last up strum. So we've gone over that, and then you have your D to D sus4 with your emphasized strumming as well. So just to play this verse in its entirety for you, it would sound like this. And yeah, kind of as you get to the end of that G and into the D portion there, you can kind of start building up your volume to get into your last chorus. So then that brings us to our last chorus, and the first three lines are the same as the first three lines of previous choruses there. Points to note is that you're just using your G sus2 this time for the whole time. There's no G5s or anything like that. So you would play this first line of tabs that we've played before 3 times through. And as I was saying in the third verse, it's kind of quiet. You're definitely strumming loud at this point for your last chorus to kind of bring the song to an end. So you play that line of chords 3 times, and then the last bit here, you don't stop after the E minor 7 like in previous choruses. You're stopping after the first up strum of that C add 9. So it kind of ends a little abrupter there. So that last line of chords would just sound like this. And then the song ends. So to play the last chorus in its entirety, it would sound like this. So now I'm just going to give you a full playthrough of the song. There won't be any lyrics or vocal over it. It's just something to play along to. So feel free to play along with me and practice the pace of the song and everything like that. And look at the other sections and just see how you do. So that's the song. Hope it was valuable for you. Hope it teaches you a little something. Hope you enjoyed. Yeah, feel free to play this video back in each section and learn as much as you need to. I'm going to try and make more videos for Autumn Variations as well as all of Ed Sheeran's other albums. My goal really is to learn them all for myself, but also teach others and anybody else who wants to learn along the way. So if you made it this far, thanks for watching, and subscribe and everything like that, because hopefully I will be releasing more videos sometime soon. So thank you.